It's time for a new evolution in raising golfers, one that doesn't involve headaches, tears, or heading down the path of unknown. Whether you're trying to introduce children to the game of golf, help them play competitively, or play at a collegiate level, you're in the right place. This show is for any parent, player, or coach who wants to build a better team at home and on the golf course. This is the Raising Golfers Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Raising Golfers Podcast. I am your host, Travis Hauser, teaching professional here in Carlsbad, California. Just had a lovely week off with my family and got to see some family up in Northern California and see some friends. And it gave me a chance to do a little bit of reflecting and thinking on things. And I know this podcast is called the Raising Golfers Podcast, but for today's episode, I'm going to be talking about raising good people, just generally speaking. And I think that if raising children with the mindset of trying to raise them as good people is more at the forefront of our goals, I think it'll also go a long ways with raising them as golfers. As we know, this is the focus of this podcast and probably why you are listening to this. So we're going to talk about some things that aren't so related to golf directly. However, I think all these things are going to help out. Now, we're coming to the end of 2021. I think it's a good time to start thinking about some goals for next year, whether it might be personally, professionally, or golf related. And I've started sending out some messages to some of my students to set some short-term, long-term goals just to kind of see where they're at and what they're thinking for next year. And so that's what kind of inspired me to do this episode, in addition to those thoughts and things I was reflecting on over the last week while I was off. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I'm going to talk about today is believing that your child is unique. You know, I think really if you think about this, your child is one of one. There's only one of them in the entire world. And, you know, we have to be able to give them time to grow and understand that they are changing emotionally every day. For some, even by hour. I mean, if I look at my two boys, they are very young. One's almost 4, the other's a year and a half. And their emotions can swing literally hourly. You know, you can have an hour where you think, wow, you know, they're really enjoying themselves. Everything's going really well. They're super happy. Nothing's really bothering them. And then the next thing you know, that all changes. I think it's just part of the development. Even in my mini golfers class just on Saturday, one of the mini golfers, he showed up in tears. You know, he's only 3 years old, but I can understand, you know, that he's upset about something and his emotions are high. And I was talking to his father about it, and his dad said, you know, I forgot to bring his golf club, and that's why his son was so upset. Now, mind you, in the class, we don't even use their own golf clubs. We actually use some of these other hard plastic clubs, but that upset him. And, you know, there might have been a chain of events going into his morning of why his emotions were so high, but it's just part of it, you know, and by the time the class started, everything was fine. And he was, you know, he's back to normal. So I think just having a little bit of patience and understanding that they are these little people with big emotions, I think it'll go a long ways with, you know, helping understand that, you know, this is them and this is how they are and this is how they're going to be today. And there's nothing strange about it. And sometimes those things and the things they say and do and the emotions make them who they are and how unique they are. So, you know, just keep in mind, they're not always going to be this way. They're not always going to be, you know, with such high, strong emotions. They may not always be so stubborn. You know, they might grow into this really highly passionate individual, and they might go from a non-educational interest or standpoint into, as they become young adults, that is something they put at the forefront of their focus, and whether it's personally or professionally. I've even seen with myself. I mean, growing up, I couldn't stand to read books. I don't know. I just had more interest being outside, playing sports, being with my buddies, doing active things. And now I really, really enjoy reading books. And I want to say in 2019, I did keep track of it. And I read over 30 books that year. And it was just unbelievable, the things that I learned and the knowledge. And it was almost addictive. So, you know, if you would have asked me that 20 years ago, never would have thought that would have been me. If you would say, hey, Travis, in 20 years, you know, as you know, you're this 14-year-old boy, you're going to be reading a ton of books and you're going to read over 30 books in a year. Never would have thought so. So, you know, every child's unique. I think we have to treat them as one and understand that they are who they are. So that's going to lead into the next one, and that is viewing challenges as things to conquer, not necessarily things to fear. And I think we see, and as adults, we understand that, every day is a new challenge, right? And, we see different things happening, whether it's a challenge that happens at home or professionally, whether it's a task or job or event or thing that you have to do professionally that just seems so difficult. I think if you really reflect on it, you have found the solutions to all of those challenges and problems. And a lot of times challenges lead to to your next opportunities. And you'd be surprised how challenges can open up another door. And certainly for me, I have really seen that over the last 2 years, and the challenges that me and my family personally went through during the pandemic, from transitioning from being in China, having a good job, working at a great academy with great management and working with great coworkers, and then everything kind of flipping over, and we end up on the other side of the world in Poland of all places, and being there and trying to figure out what we're going to do, where we're going to live, how we're going to get back up on our feet. And looking back and reflecting on that situation and that scenario that we went through, it really opened up this huge opportunity that we never could have seen. And we're so fortunate of having at this moment, being here in Carlsbad, California, working at the facility that I'm working at, and living in this awesome location in the world and town and community. It's amazing, right? And there's a good quote from Morgan Freeman. He says, "Challenge yourself. It is the only path to growth." And I think it's so true, because really the only way to grow as a person is really to push yourself and take those challenges and put them at the forefront. I think, you're really, really going to see and learn these opportunities that might come. And it's something that we definitely don't want to steer away from. And I think it's something that we just need to help our children understand, accept, and, giving them little tasks that might be just a little bit beyond their comfort zone might go a long ways. And it can start at a small scale. It can start with just some toys. It can start with an art project. It can start with a task around the house, whether it's cleaning something or doing something around the yard. But just giving these little challenges so they start to sense that difficulty, and then use their own uniqueness and own skill sets to start to problem solve and solve those problems themselves. And I think that'll be a huge way to help develop them long term as human beings. So to add on to that would be then to develop a competence for them. And, we had this episode last year with Gavin Grindelwood, Failure is a Feature. And, I've talked about how I was so scared of making mistakes and failure. And I still have a bit of it today. But, for a while, I would then just kind of switch that whole mindset and almost go after the things that I feared most, whether it was a language barrier with Mandarin Chinese, whether it was a awkward conversation I'd have to have with a parent about their junior golfer and their development. These types of things I would try to go into and almost try to fail. And many times, I would make the mistake, but I would learn from it. And then also at the same time, as I was in the middle of it, I would be developing my own skills and learning along the way, and be able to come up with solutions in the middle of those situations that I couldn't even predicted I would have come up with even 5 minutes before I got myself in that situation. So, running away from failures, I think, will only hurt. And I think helping our young children understand that it's not something we need to run away from. Mistakes are part of the learning process, and helping them embrace it, and, not necessarily disciplining them when they're making mistakes, but just almost like guiding them and encouraging them and explaining the situations to help them understand that, this is part of the learning process and mistakes are okay. They're going to happen. Children who believe something like cooking is dangerous or hard will lose years or even a lifetime of not mastering that skill, just because they have this mindset and believe that, they're not good at it, or they're not going to succeed in it, or they're going to make a lot of mistakes, or they're going to fail, and then they don't even give it a try. We might be restricting them from an opportunity that could completely change their lives. So we certainly want to be able to help encourage them and understand that mistakes are okay, failure is going to happen, and that's okay. And having those conversations about that. A great quote from Ann Landers is, "It's not what you do for your children, but what you have taught them to do for themselves that will make them successful human beings."
And now let's hear a message from our show sponsor. Hey guys, this last spring I teamed up with Operation 36 here at our facility in Carlsbad, California, and it has completely changed my way of coaching and service to my customers. Operation 36 is a developmental golf program designed to take beginners from playing their first round to being able to shoot par or better for 9 holes. So here's how it works. Participants attend weekly 1-hour classes and work through a 6-level curriculum. They then play in 9-hole events once or twice a month with a common goal to shoot 36 or better from different distances. And using the Operation 36 app, coaches can plan programs, communicate with families, and track students' progress. It's really, really cool. If you're a parent listening, search for a program near you on their website at operation36.golf/juniors. And coaches, if you'd like to start a program at your facility, go to the same website, operation36.golf/coaches. Now, moving into the next section here, I would like to talk a little bit about using positive language. And this is something that I've had to work on, I would say, over even the last 10 years. And I try to work on it personally in my house with my children and with my wife and with my extended family members. I also like to try to use it with my coworkers or friends, and then also all the way down to my students. So if any of my students are listening, you're probably laughing inside because, we talk about and try to talk about the positives of things because, for example, golf is a very difficult sport. And I think a lot of times we embrace the difficulties, but at the same time, we've got to be thinking about what those positive things are because it's really, really easy to dwell on the negatives and really, really, really difficult to think about what the positives are, especially in a sport as difficult as golf. So, just even using positive language or, talking about, okay, 3 things we did well today and maybe 1 thing we want to improve on, as opposed to, using negative language, putting the children down, you know, belittling them with some of the words that we say, you know, almost sometimes the language we have to use is in soft language like, hey, maybe we should try this, what do you think about this, and almost let them kind of come to it. It's a very positive and gentle way just to kind of help guide them and understand that it's like, hey, we're working on this together, this whole life thing, and talking in just a positive way, it just goes so far. I think it's just a wonderful thing. And Mother Teresa had a quote, and she said, "Kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless." Now, a couple other things here I'd like to talk about with raising good people. So, accepting change. Change is so hard, like really, really difficult. And one thing I think, just looking from myself, my wife, what we've done with especially our oldest, but also our youngest child, and we partially have done it by accident, but it's also based on the choices and decisions that we had made. But let's just use my oldest son. He's almost 4. He has already lived on 3 different continents and in 3 different countries and been experienced to 3 different languages and had 3 different sets of friends and people and communities that he's been involved in. And I think it's really helped him, understand that, change is okay. And, we're going to have to say our goodbyes at times. And as tough as they are, I think you begin to start getting more and more comfortable and more used to change. And, nowadays, even when we, leave his friend's house or it's time to go, I think if he hadn't have been through some of those experiences already in his childhood and understand the idea of change, I think he would put up a much bigger fight per se when it was time to go. And ironically, now he's accepting of it and he understands that, we have to shift gears.
he is very much in the present, as most children are of his age. However, I think his acceptance to change is very, very good. And part of that's just been based on the environment that he's been raised in. Now, Barack Obama, he said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. And I think that's huge, because I think that gives children just the idea that change can create opportunities, and change is actually a good thing. And the last thing I want to talk about, and a very similar thing just kind of built on that, is just the power of community. Again, there was another episode we talked about last year. Me and Neil Plummer dove deep into the power of community and environment. And, you know, there's a saying that you are the sum of the 5 closest people around you. And really, if you think about it, I think there's so much truth behind that. And I would argue to say that it doesn't matter if you are a child or an adult, you really, really are the sum of the 5 closest people around you. So, you know, being an adult, and this is something I thought about professionally, was that I need to surround myself with people who are better than me at coaching golf, who are smarter than me in personal finance, who are more successful at their time management and being able to balance out their work-life balance. And I would say once I got to China and worked for the Golf Academy in China, not only did I start to find that community of people, but then I became part of that community, and then I also helped grow that community in areas that I had just discussed. And that helped us all grow together. I mean, I couldn't tell you really how important to my personal life and career that was, being with the people that I was working with and the friends that I had in my close group of 5 friends in Shanghai, China. And honestly, I think it's going to change me for the rest of my life. And those things that I learned in that community, I have already started to help my own children understand and develop. So we have to think, who are our children growing up with? What is the community that's around them? What community do we want them to be in so that they can begin to thrive in that community? And we want them to be a part of that community where they feel comfortable, where they can go talk to some of the other people within that community, whether it's a friend of theirs' parents, or, you know, as they get older into their teens, being comfortable discussing some of the challenges that they're going through with one of their friends, and having people to then bounce ideas off of, or having people to help them grow and inspire them to be wonderful people. I think being in a strong community and environment will play a huge role in their development. And there's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child. I think if you look at these points that I discussed today, and some of these things that I've been reflecting on recently, and you tie it all back to the game of golf, I think if we do all of these things, it will really help develop our children into good people, and I honestly think it'll go a long ways for their golf. So I hope for you take a moment to think about some of these things, think about some of your goals, maybe some things you'd like to change over the next year in 2022. I'd love to hear your feedback and appreciate you taking the time coming out here, listening to the Raising Golfers podcast, and look forward to having you here back next week.